I still do that. Maybe that's why I'm dying of
You know
diabetes
what? You
now.
also have
You're not. No,
you
you're
still
not.
have kids in the house, so I mean,
Right.
it's like it's around.
Well,
It's a
you have
gateway.
kids. You're gonna have kids too. You're not gonna give her Cocoa Puffs ever?
I got on the bandwagon when they brought back Boo Berry and Count Chocula
Oh
and
yeah.
Franken. Those all suck. It's like these
They
aren't
do
good.
suck now. They're not as good as they were when you were a kid.
They have that weird corn syrupy where they taste real good, but then it just has a steep, like off the cliff, like it doesn't taste good anymore.
Yeah, it's not as good as they used to be. They're not as good as they used to be.
And especially as you get older, your ability to taste subtle differences and all that goes out the window. But like,
Yeah.
kind of ridiculous. I, don't know. I love donuts. I honestly do love donuts.
Donuts
I
are
never.
great.
You know what I never liked was sugar corn pops.
Oh, I hated those things.
Sugar corn pops?
They
You
tasted
mean
like
the
nothing.
sugar bear? You mean?
Yeah, with sugar bear was the
Yeah, those aren't great. Those aren't great. What about just corn pops?
corn,
Like
the yellow ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, those were great. No, now I don't like them anymore. They just taste like styrofoam to me now. But I loved them as a kid.
Well, if you got like the six, you remember where they used to have those six bundle of
Cereal. Oh, the little box cereals.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
those
Yeah.
those were the ones. The Cocoa Puffs were always not the Cocoa Puffs. The Cocoa Pops were always the first ones to go.
And you were always upset because they would always throw in one of those just plain cornflakes. Like it's the 1/6.
I would eat those before the sugar corn pops.
Really?
Yeah,
the
sugar
Special
corn
K?
pops. Yeah.
You take the Special K over the corn
because
pops?
all the other ones were special and you look forward to. This is the one that's like, all right, I'll just get it out of the way
I'd
first.
fight with my sister over the Cocoa Krispies.
Cocoa Krispies.
I think that there are only two. Okay, I'll admit there are only two cereals I really, really hankered for. One was Fruit Loops, and the other one was not Captain Crunch. It was like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, but not as cinnamon-y. Was that Captain Crunch?
Oh, Waffle
Cinnamon-y?
Crisp? Have you ever had Waffle Crisp?
Oh, I've heard of that. Did I ever have that?
That's good.
I can't remember if I ever had it though.
I don't even know if they make it anymore.
Yeah. Quisp. I was a big fan of
No,
Quisp.
not Quisp. What's your favorite donut, just out of curiosity?
I like an old fashioned.
Oh, so do I. But I like old-fashioned with chocolate.
Chocolate ice rings?
Yep. Same here.
Yeah, chocolate ice rings are the
I like
best.
filled. I like filled ones, but
Jelly or custard?
Has to be
custard.
jelly.
Custard, but I also jelly's real close. It kind of depends on my mood.
See, the thing is,
We
with
gotta
jelly,
start- we gotta
sometimes
start
the
the show.
powdered sugar is like a no-go. For
It can, yeah, they can. It depends on the place too.
Custard is only good in the maple bars.
All right, here we go. You guys ready?
Oh, wait a minute.
We're not done talking about this.
Sorry, we have important donuts to talk about, Tom. We can't do this tech news show.
Look at the time fly.
All right.
All right, so no face, right? I'm doing the screens.
Yeah, that's your call.
Okay.
That's fine. Here we go. Daily Tech News Show is powered by its audience, not outside organizations. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. This is the Daily Tech News for Friday, August 19th, 2016. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Roger Chang, producer of the Daily Tech News Show, filling in. Darren Kitchen got called away at the last minute, unfortunately, so Roger's going to be here with us today. How are you, Roger?
I'm good. I do not have my face because I'm doing the screens for anyone who's watching on the stream.
He didn't have time to put on his face before the show. If you're watching the video, if you're watching the audio, you would never have guessed. Also with us, Len Peralta is back from a vacation and some conferences and ready to illustrate.
Yes, 2 weeks gone. It was my longest time gone off this show.
Missed you.
Thank you so much. In Indianapolis and Michigan, and I'm ready to do some great arts for you
Excellent.
guys.
Well, we tried to make the hardest to draw topics.
That's good.
Once again,
I was happy to see today's top story. So
A little later in the show, Dan Tentler, founder of Phobos Group, is going to join us to help explain man-in-the-middle attacks in relation to some hacker tools that have been revealed not only from the leak we talked about earlier in the week, but also by some confirmation in some Snowden documents that The Intercept had access to. Just coming in right before the show, Google is ending support for Chrome apps on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, although they'll remain for the time being on Chrome OS. Here are some more top stories. 30 technology companies are partnering in a U.S. FCC plan to combat robocalls. This is, for those not in the United States, is not when a robot calls you. It's their automatically dialed calls, often pre-recorded. Companies include telephone service providers like AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon, along with phone providers like Apple and Google. The robocall strike force held its first meeting Friday. It really should be about robots, to be honest, with that name. Among the goals are caller ID verification standards, a do not originate list. So the do not call list says you shouldn't call these numbers. The do not originate list says if a carrier sees that a number is being spoofed of a government agency or a bank, you wouldn't let the call start, because a lot of people will spoof the numbers. Group will make its first report on October 19th.
This is something that, ironically, or actually coincidentally enough, has been plaguing me for the past 3 months. Like, I'm getting these weird robocalls. I'm not sure if anyone else does, but literally I pick up the phone and I know it's a 1-800 number and I shouldn't pick it up. But it's like, hello, and there's nothing that happens for 10 seconds, so I hang up.
Your home warranty is about to expire.
Well, I've gotten those too. Like, you know, your home warranty is like, listen, I'm a renter. I doubt I have a home warranty right now. Or I get something with very vague, like, what is it? Solar panels. That's the other one. I get a lot of solar panel ones. It's really obnoxious. And it's like, please don't call me again. And that was the whole thing about the do not call list. And after pre-show we were talking about it, now I know why they still call me, even though I've told them not to.
Yeah,
but
they're just breaking the rules, basically.
But now they do robocalls where, you know, it's a machine that calls and you don't pick up. I hang up, and then I have a voicemail of this thing.
Yeah, I think this is a good plan. I think a lot of people will like the way the FCC is going about this, because they are convening the people responsible for the phone calls from end to end, the carriers and the devices that you use, to say, hey, come up with a solution, rather than just imposing some kind of regulation that may or may not work.
And, you know, really, regulation-wise, I think it's all there. Really, it's the mechanism, the implementation that these companies, as well as the federal government, will use in order to kind of sift through this, because you don't want to block legitimate calls.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Randall Stevenson from AT&T said exactly that. He's like, you have people following the rules, and they should be able to use the system since they're following the rules.
I wait with bated breath, and I hope they come to something, because at some point it's just obnoxious.
Wall Street Journal reports Pandora is signing deals with record companies to launch a $10 a month on-demand streaming tier with unlimited access to songs on the platform. Remember, Pandora bought Ardio's remains a while back, so this may be the resurfacing of that. Pandora has a current $5 a month ad-free Pandora One radio tier. That's also going to get some new features, like allowing you more skips and allowing offline listening. The new plans are expected to launch sometime in September.
Yeah, I mean, for the longest time, people have been wondering, like, what's Pandora up to? I mean, like, not growing. I mean, are they just kind of floating along this giant wave of streaming radio services? And unlike like Spotify, where you can kind of pick, like, you know, I want this particular artist, Pandora has always been about cultivating and curating like a genre or style of music, and you know what they used to flog was the fact that they had a intelligent system that would
the Music Genome Project.
The Music Genome Project. So, and you know, I have to admit, it was something that I was very attracted to, where you would find music that you may have not ever listened to, but you would enjoy based on your history of style of music you were listening to. So I'm very curious to see if this is an actual shift away from that core concept of the business and moving out into a generic, like, we're going to be another streaming radio service.
I wonder if this is Pandora sort of giving up, saying you can't survive, or we can't survive just being a customizable radio. Maybe if we can get the record industry a little more money from a sales-based, or at least a rental-based, $10 a month-based system, that they'll let us do a few more cool things on the radio side than they would under the current licensing scheme. Remember, Pandora just pays a mechanical royalty like a radio station would, albeit online, so they have to pay more money than an over-the-air radio station would. Over-the-air radio station is exempted from paying any kind of copyright license, whereas online they have to. And that's been Pandora's complaint for years, is we can't make enough money to sustain the company if we have to pay those royalty rates. So this may be either hedging that bets or starting to admit that a radio station just doesn't make enough money. Like you said, they've had stagnant revenue.
And outside of the pure monetary aspect, I'm wondering if this will solidify existing popular artists, and where do you go to find new and upcoming bands that you have never heard of, that no one's ever heard of?
Well, that's what Spotify does. They have their Discover Weekly, and now this new Radar list that's trying to expose you to new things.
Well, no, that's exactly. I'm like, where does Pandora go, like, in order to do that? Do they just continue with their existing model, which just seems like
yeah, like maybe the original Pandora that we've come to know just becomes its own Discover Weekly for a Pandora streaming service. On Thursday, in federal district court for the Northern California District, Judge Edward M. Chen overturned an April class action lawsuit settlement between Uber and a class of drivers. We talked about this settlement when it was originally agreed to by both parties. It's the one that creates a drivers association. It allows the Uber drivers in Massachusetts and California to acknowledge that they would like to have tips. The judge rejected the settlement, even though both sides agreed, because it's $100 million, although it's really only $84 million guaranteed. Another $16 million is dependent on Uber's performance as a stock. And the judge said, I'm only going to consider the $84 million. That's going to represent only 0.1% of the potential full verdict value for the case, which the judge said is, quote, not fair, adequate, and reasonable. Lawsuit regards the classification of Uber drivers as whether they should be employees or contractors. The objection to the settlement was brought by a group of 200 Uber drivers. Now, there's 400,000 in the class. 200 brought an objection with the assistance of the National Taxi Workers Alliance. Drivers attorney Shannon Liss Reardon says a revised settlement may yet be reached, but she's willing to go to court if she has to.
Yeah, Uber has been in a position of, forgive the pun, a little bit in the driver's seat when it came to a lot of this stuff, and I think what we now see is kind of a collective pushback. Before it was here and there, it was either one municipality or one taxi or livery organization against them. Now it's kind of like, oh, let's combine our collective interests together. And it's very interesting because will Uber be remembered as the business that started this whole kind of ride-sharing thing, or will they be considered, like, from the prism of history, or will they be considered the watershed moment where how the ride-sharing markets finally got a set of rules and they got standardized things of what you can.
I think it doesn't have to be an either or. I think Uber definitely will be remembered as starting the ride-sharing movement. Also will probably be remembered as the company that inspired the rules about contractors and employees in this new sort of gig, as they call it, the gig economy, where you don't sign up for a 40-hour-a-week job, but should you still be treated like an employee? And that's what's going on here. I have a feeling that Uber will just agree to more money to end this case, because the last thing they want is a court to decide that all of these drivers are employees. And if they can get a settlement with more money, then and get the judge to sign off on it, they'd much rather do that.
But at what point doesn't that just kick the can down the road? Like, will at some point eventually they will have to make that?
Well, the other thing Uber's doing is lobbying Congress, and if they can get a legislation passed at some point, which is going to take a long time, that clarifies that these are not employees, they're contractors. If they can do that, then they want to kick the can down the road until they can get that taken care of.
A lot of can kicking.
Yeah, so much can kicking. Brad Sams at Thurrott.com notes that many people have reported their webcams stopped working with the Windows 10 anniversary update, and there's a reason for that. Apparently, Windows stopped allowing MJPEG or H.264 encoded streams on the Windows 10 anniversary update, only allowing YU-Y2 encoding. Microsoft did this with good reason. They wanted to stop duplication of encoding streams in some of the new scenarios that Windows uses, but it had the unintended effect of causing a webcam that tries to use MJPEG or H.264 to freeze after about a minute. Mike M. of Windows Camera Team says a fix is coming in September. Microsoft has not issued its own workaround, but if you're comfortable editing the registry, Rafael Rivera has a workaround on his Twitter feed @withinrafael. And Brad Sams also has Rafael's fix in the Thurrott.com article, which we'll have in our show notes.
Cool. It is sort of a legacy effect of, when webcams were new and everyone was trying to figure out the most effective way of transporting that data from your camera out to the internet and all that, and what format should we use. It's interesting. I mean, it's essentially they're dealing with a decade plus worth of different solutions, and they say, oh, maybe we don't need 5 different encoders running parallel while you're trying to run Skype. And it's interesting because I wonder, because this is not unusual although not directly related, actually not even directly related, when they came out with Windows Vista, they literally killed the whole concept of having hardware accelerated audio by pulling it out of the kernel stack. And the short end of that was that you didn't need to buy a fancy sound card to get any benefits from it. And the downside was there are all these people with legacy hardware. It's like, well, how am I going to get all these really cool 3D effects that I paid money for back in 2004? It's like, well, kind of SOL. And at some point, you do kind of have to cut off some of these solutions to make way.
It sounds like Microsoft underestimated the amount of people out there using Logitech C920s at H.264 encoding, and now they've been put on their back foot of oh, we thought we could just not support them and they would quiet down and go away, and that's not happening.
I think a lot of it must be just kind of Apple envy, because Apple can kind of seem to do that. It's like, we're moving processors. We'll give you a bridging solution.
You think Microsoft is envious of Apple's arrogance? Is that what you're trying to say?
I would say arrogance, but I would say they're probably less frictionable.
Yeah, maybe arrogance is too loaded of a word, but Apple's sort of ability to just do what they want and damn the consequences. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman reports sources tell him, by the way, that Apple has not been able to add data connections to its watches because it can't get the battery life at once. Now, they could put the data connection in there. It's not technically impossible. In fact, lots of Android watches are coming out with data connections, but it doesn't give enough. They've not been able to ensure enough battery life to satisfy Apple engineers, so they're still studying low-power cellular data chips. New Apple Watches are still expected this year, but they would just integrate GPS. They wouldn't, at this point, integrate any kind of data connection.
I don't know. I mean, is kind of shoehorning in the smartphone aspect of a smartphone into a watch necessarily the most?
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely want. I tried an Apple Watch for a month, and one of the biggest complaints was I have to have my phone around to use it. Yeah. So I definitely want the data connection in there. But yes, I also want the watch to last for days because it's a watch. I don't want to have to be out halfway through a day and go, oh wait, my watch died. I have to recharge.
I foresee the solution being kind of, so remember when they had the self-winding watches and those things were like, oh my God, that's the most creative use of technology. They have the whole research going into bio-generated electricity where you can just walk and generate power. You do that and just cram it into a watch, or maybe you have to wear a pad on your skin in 2 places. You can generate enough electricity from, say, a 2-hour jogging stretch that you could conceivably at least keep the watch charged longer than it would have been if you didn't.
That's a cool idea. The other thing might be just a better battery. Now, we said Apple is working on low power cellular data chips. Roger's got another interesting idea that I know some people are working on. MIT News reports that lithium metal batteries developed by Solid Energy can deliver the same energy as lithium ion batteries at half the size. So, and apparently the way it works, that also means that you can have double the battery life at equivalent size. New batteries use lithium metal instead of carbon for the anode. Solid Energy CEO Qichao Hu and team solved the overheating problem that plagued previous lithium metal batteries by coating the anode with a solid electrolyte that functions at room temperature and doesn't create some harmful filaments. The filaments would kind of build up. They called them dendrites because they look like nerve
Oh,
dendrites.
yes, I remember those. Those were an issue with, was it nickel metal hydride?
Yeah, there used to be an issue with that as well, and they would cause overheating. They could maybe be a fire risk, and so they figured out how to stop those from building up. And not only that, but this is one of those rare battery technologies, Roger, where we'll actually get to see it. Solid Energy plans to launch batteries for drones by the end of the year. They want to have battery cells for smartphones and other electronics in 2017, and they want to bring electric vehicle batteries in 2018, which, if that happens, could double the range of your electric vehicle.
That would be awesome. I mean, people may not be aware, one of the biggest issues with battery technology was the heat generation. I mean, that's just a consequence, especially when you're drawing a current. And one of the huge kind of seismic shifts that Tesla did was with the battery was, let's not just create one large battery that you have to pull from one point and have a single anode and cathode. We'll build an array of very small batteries so we can pull a much larger current from it without necessarily having the same heat issues and, of course, fire risks that you get. So if they can follow through on this and make a commercially viable product, I know that it works in the lab, but a commercially viable product, I think we could definitely see this in cars within a year, 2 years afterwards.
Yeah,
which would be huge.
That could be really huge. Someone without a username in the chat room says, "I'll believe it when I can buy it." We'll know by the end of the year whether you can buy it. That is the shortest timeline I've ever seen on one of these battery technology stories yet. So fingers crossed. Thanks to all those who participate in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. We had PC Guy 8088 in there, another J Martin, AJC 87, ICU, SP Sheridan, 313C7, and more. Join them and vote at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com, and that is a look at the top stories. All right, so as I mentioned at the top of the show, The Intercept has a story out today where it is comparing the hacking tools that were leaked online Monday with some NSA documents leaked by Edward Snowden. They found an NSA manual in the Snowden documents for implanting software that describes a 16-character string that is needed to use if you want to track your second date implementation. Second date is the name of a hacker tool that the NSA delineates in its manual. The tracking prevented re-exploitation from a target hitting the back button. That code that is described in the manual shows up in 14 files in leaked tools, including a leaked tool from Monday called seconddate3021.exe. So this would be the first leak of an NSA tool to the public, to the general public. Second date was allegedly, according to the documents, used against Pakistan's National Telecommunications Corporation, VIP division, and a Lebanese ISP. In the 31-page document titled Fox Acid SOP for Operational Management, second date is described as a component of something called Bad Decision, which is an infiltration tool that acts as a man-in-the-middle attack on 802.11 wireless. So will essentially trick your browser into thinking it's connected to a safe website while redirecting the payload to a Fox Acid server that delivers a bunch of malware, and that malware can then be exploited down the road. Joining us to explain a little bit about how this might work, Dan Tentler, founder of Phobos Group, is on the line. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing not bad. How are you?
Thank you so much for stepping in and helping explain this. So second date sounds like a typical man-in-the-middle attack. How do those work?
So it's pretty straightforward. If you can imagine your typical connection, let's just say you live in an apartment and you have a laptop, and your laptop talks to your, call it a Linksys or D-Link wireless router, and that wireless router is connected to your cable modem, your DSL modem, and then that takes you out to the internet. Those devices, the Linksys or the D-Link and the cable modem, those are, we call them infrastructure devices, and they are what allow you to get to the internet and to do all the things that you do when you're on the internet. If somebody were to say gain control of one, that would make them quite literally the man in the middle. They are physically between you and the internet that you so desperately desire. That being the case, there's a lot of ways to mess with that traffic, to mess with that connection, and to do things that are very shady. So in this particular case, from what I've been able to read, the modus operandi of the NSA in this case is very similar to your typical pen tester, to your 15-year-old kid who just figured out what a pineapple was and took it to a coffee shop, that sort of thing, right? Yeah, yeah, one of those, right? Yeah. It's literally that, except spit shined and polished by the NSA with all of their funding and all of their devs. By the sounds of it, from what I've been able to grok reading this documentation in the last couple of days, the NSA has invested significant time in finding browser ODAs, which are their top-tier problems. I mean, problems to be exploited for the purpose of gaining access to other people's computers. There's a conference called CanSec West, and during CanSec West, there's a contest called Pwn to Own, where some of the biggest prizes that people walk away with, which is either hundreds of thousands and I think sometimes millions of dollars. I forget, they're huge bounties. But if you can find ODA in Firefox and Chrome, you're walking away with, basically a condo on the beach in Santa Monica. Like,
yeah. So when you say ODA, you're referring to zero-day exploits, which are exploits that nobody knew about until the day they were discovered.
Correct. Sorry, that's my
yeah. No worries.
Right. But yeah, previously undisclosed, currently unknown exploits that are exploiting vulnerabilities that only the NSA knows about. It has been suspected that they have what's called a fuzz farm, which is, if you're familiar with the term fuzzing, which is effectively throwing random garbage at stuff until it breaks and then seeing how it breaks and then trying to turn those breakpoints into buffer overflows, heap overflows, all sorts of stuff to try and have functional working exploits. They have their own. The presumption is they have their own fuzz farm, and they just sit in fuzz browsers. And when they find problems in the Tor browser or in Chrome or in IE or what have you, they just hang on to those. And then, based on what we've read about Foxacid, Foxacid seems like the NSA's version of Metasploit's browser autopwn, which is basically if you can get the page that somebody is visiting to load one line of JavaScript, which tells the browser, hey, you should look at this JavaScript over here from the other server, which the Pineapple is capable of doing this. The device, you just show it on camera, you can do this with that device. All you need to do is intercept HTML and inject one line of text to say, hey, go over to that server and load that JavaScript. So in the case of us civilian types that don't have access to the NSA goodies, it would be something like browser autopwn out of Metasploit. NSA has their own much more interesting version of that. And for all intents and purposes, this thing just compromises the browser and gives them access to the computer.
So essentially what's happening is you don't notice anything because CNN.com loads like it normally would, but Foxacid is putting in that JavaScript, which then injects a bunch of malware that is being put on your machine while you're just reading the latest story from CNN and you don't notice a thing.
Correct. Now,
is Second Date then the thing that is injecting the JavaScript?
I think Second Date is the they have the Pineapple. Actually, it seems like different components of what they're describing, a lot of which are sort of, there's little Fisher-Price Baby's First Hacks version of it that live in the Pineapple. The Pineapple is capable of doing what's called a deauthentication attack, which will take a machine and knock it off the network, and then the idea is you try to intercept the machine that you've just knocked off the network with the Pineapple, making you the man in the middle. So what it seems like Second Date does, it's a little vague, it doesn't outwardly describe it, but based on the operational documentation we've seen, it seems like Second Date is a combination of hardware and software that the NSA is using to effectively do exactly the same thing as the Pineapple, to deauthenticate a target from the wireless network, to have it authenticate to it, or either that or break into the wireless network and gain access to the network, at which point you can do ARP man-in-the-middle or other types of man-in-the-middle attacks that would allow you to gain control of that connection to then subsequently inject text into browsing sessions.
Now, one last thing before we let you go. Snowden has been commenting on this and said, NSA lurks on systems controlled by others all the time. They're supposed to clean up after themselves if they use a compromised server. Maybe somebody didn't, and that's how these tools got out there rather than someone actually hacking into the NSA. He wrote, NSA malware staging servers getting hacked by a rival is not new. A rival publicly demonstrating they have done so is, and that's, I think, what's grabbing the headlines, is this organization putting these tools out on the internet on Monday. What do you think the upshot of them doing that would be? Does it give a lot of tools to people who otherwise wouldn't have them, or are these just kind of older 2013 era versions of things that are already out there?
Okay, so let me try and hit all your talking points. Okay, I'll go backwards. Are these new? Well, for the NSA, not so much, because some of the dates in these files are from 2010. So these things are 6 years old. However, just because the NSA has had it for 6 years doesn't mean the rest of the world even was aware that these existed. Cisco crapped a diamond on Monday when this stuff was released because they had absolutely no idea that SNMP was being used to exploit Cisco equipment, and that this has been an active use exploit for probably 6 or more years. So as far as the rest of the world is concerned, this is new to us. It's not new to the NSA, but it's definitely new to us. And in terms of, is it plausible that an operator just left their stuff on somebody else's machine? That seems like the most likely scenario. I presume that if they're talking about hacked servers, then the presumption is they are doing what your typical black hat would do, is they're going to find some server somewhere, some website with a WordPress 1.0 installation that's riddled with vulnerabilities that never gets updated, with a person that never looks at their logs and their password is password123, and they're going to say, oh, this is nice, and they're going to set up shop there on that person's blog, and that blog becomes a Fox acid server. So what they do is they man in the middle somebody, and they redirect the browser in the background using JavaScript to go hit that Fox acid server, and bam, you have they call it a whacked computer, and now that computer is effectively part of their botnet, for lack of a better term, and not necessarily saying that the NSA is using all their compromised machines to conduct additional attacks, but
sure,
that's the first step to having a botnet. You hack a bunch of machines and you have them all phone home to the same command and control servers.
So it seems like that's probably what happened. It seems like, though, that this is pretty significant, that these tools are out there for people to use that they wouldn't have been able to use otherwise. And like you say, in cases like Cisco, maybe there's even a positive aspect where they are now patching a vulnerability they didn't know existed. I don't know. Yeah,
and to that end, it's an interesting point is that when we had no idea what the NSA was doing, it was all we would perceive. We're groomed by Hollywood, right, to understand that what we don't understand has to be magical and like black magic wizardry, and there's cloak and daggers and like your typical sort of Hollywood-esque stuff. And then you see a leak like this come out and say, oh, like their ops people are doing exactly what we do on pen test gigs, like almost to the letter.
Yeah.
They just call it different things, and they have their own custom tools. But operationally, they have C2s. They use the same. They have their own version of browser autopwn. The way that they conduct themselves based on this documentation is very similar to like your typical pen test shop. I'm like, wow, it's sort of. It takes away it demystifies the NSA. It makes them seem like they're just a government institution that does what pen tester types do. They just have different people they target, and they obviously bend/break the rules. Typically on the pen tester, attack sim side of the house, we're not allowed to just go and hack some random blog and use it as a staging server for our malware during assessments.
Do as they say, not as they do.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some insight in that. That's extremely interesting and very helpful. Dan is the founder of the Phobos group, as I mentioned, phobos.io. Anything to tell people about before we let you go?
Sure. So Phobos group is basically, the easiest way to describe it is to ask, did you hear what happened to Sony Pictures? And most people will say, yes, oh my God, I remember. And I say, that's what we do. That's exactly, we do what's called attack simulation. So some shops help their clients with compliance. Some shops do vulnerability assessments. We actually be bad guys, and we show your staff and your blue teams what it's like when a real bad guy decides they want to get into your stuff. Not what a pen tester is going to do, but what a real bad guy is going to do.
So you act like the bad guys without restraint, but in service of letting people figure out how to stop that word to really happen.
Right. So like one of our last clients was a power company, and they said, we want you to shut off one of our power plants. So we did.
Wow. That, first of all, bold move on their part to to say, yes, we want to do that. And really, for those freaking out in the audience, crazy good that you were able to do it, because now they'll figure out how to stop someone from doing it that way, right?
And now the incident response people know what it feels like to get that 5 a.m. phone call, whereas before they never have before. And now there's a whole bunch of stuff happening in terms of eyes being opened, and now there's an incident response plan, and now they have an idea of what to do if somebody goes in and shuts off all the breakers at a solar plant. So a lot of learning experience, because most businesses are very apprehensive at the idea of, and what other places would call like conducting a disaster recovery drill, which is shutting off all your production systems and seeing if the disaster recovery side of things actually turns on.
Wow, excellent. If people want to find out more about what you do, what's the best way to get a hold of you, follow you, find you on the internet?
So I'm Viss on Twitter, VISS, and the website is phobos.io, phobos.io. I'm online all the time. Come find me and say hello.
All right, thank you again, Dan. I really appreciate having you on the show.
It's been a great time. I'd love to come back someday.
All right, go attack something. Have fun.
Thanks.
We'll talk to you soon. Let's get to our pick of the day from Mark in Detroit, Michigan, who said, I'd like to suggest a podcast called Song Exploder. If you like music and want to know how songs are made, it can be very enlightening. Recently, they did the BoJack Horseman theme song, and a while ago, they did the theme to Game of Thrones. Good stuff. I've heard of Song Exploder, but I've never listened to it. And essentially, I guess they just do a breakdown, Roger, where they like go through the song and explain all of the pieces of it musically.
Which is something I think is super cool because, for example, you've seen a lot of something similar when people break down the special effects sequence in a movie. Like, this is what they did, these are the various elements, but people have really never done it with music, and it's actually really cool to know that there are people willing to kind of present that, because like any good art, music is a layered tapestry of various elements that you put on top of each other to create that final piece, and that's pretty neat. I mean, it's funny because you guys were just talking about penetration testing and how like you unveiled the mysticism or the secrecy of what the NSA does. In a way, this is what this site does. It takes away some of the elements that make it seem like such a magical tool. And it's like, how do people do that? Like, how do people create this amazing piece of art that I'm so, I'm inundated by because I really enjoy the show or this movie. The one I can't get over is the one still is Stranger Things. The Stranger Things soundtrack, at least the opening bit of it. And because it sounds familiar, one, but two, it's not something that you recognize immediately, but it feels familiar, and that's how they do that still beyond me.
Thank you, Mark, for sending that along. Send your picks to us, folks. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. You can find more picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. We'll probably have to put a line under all of the responses to USB-C versus the traditional audio input jack after a while, but we got more good ones, so I wanted to give another representative sample. Justin wanted to know what becomes of FM radios in phones that use headphone jacks as tuners. He says, I know this is probably a small use case, but sometimes you just want to listen to local radio, or if traveling with spotty data, you can still get FM stations almost everywhere. I think it's vanishingly small, the number of people, in fact, even the number of phones that take advantage of those FM tuners. But
it's diminishing.
Yeah, it is a nice backup that will probably just go away, sadly. Ned is an audio engineer with 15 years experience in broadcast and is very pro USB-C. His full email is in the show notes, but the highlights are that the headphone amplifier in any consumer-grade device makes me want to cry. Upgradability and analog signal loss. He asks, would you prefer a world where we all use composite video instead of HDMI?
He does bring up a very good point. There are limitations to that amplifier because you cram it into a very small, thin, flattened device. There's only so much you can do with it.
I'll be honest. I kind of prefer component video to HDMI only because I'm a Philistine who cares less about quality than I should, but also because it actually allows you to do what you want with that analog signal, whereas HDMI will tell me I can't be played on that monitor. Oh no, you can't run it through the slim box.
It's HDCP.
It's HDCP implemented through the HDMI, but you can't implement HDCP through the component.
You know what? We could have all moved to BNC connectors and used an SDI jack and have all that awesome raw video. But you know what? Stakeholders said no, and there you have it.
Heather from Charleston, South Carolina, very sensibly asked why they don't just give us phones with 2 USB-C ports. She said if a manufacturer came out and said, we'll have 2 USB-C ports on our phone, it sounds like Scott's main objection and mine would be dealt with. And when she says mine, she means hers. She says, sorry about all your old mini jack cables, though.
It's probably because it would cost them an extra quarter per device.
I bet you we see phones that come out with 2
it
USB-C
will.
ports.
Part of it is because when they want to get these out as quickly as possible. And why complicate things immediately? Like, as you said, eventually there will probably be 1 or 2 models. But, from their standpoint, it's not a huge margin maker for them, so why do it?
And then Sheila in Georgia said, wouldn't making the battery bigger be negated by the power you need to send to a Bluetooth signal? And she's suggesting, like, if I use Bluetooth headset instead of a headphone, either USB-C or audio jack, she says, I leave Bluetooth off because it helps drain my iPhone battery. My guess is the battery increase would make up for it, but maybe not by much. It's a fair point.
I mean, she does. Is actually a very good point.
Yeah. T2T2 wrote in regarding the Overwatch GGEZ replacement that we talked about yesterday to sort of discourage trollish behavior. And he has an excellent description of the League of Legends system for fighting toxic behavior. You can read the full version at our show notes, and I recommend that you do. It's very well researched. He's got links and everything. But the summary is, in 2015, they started using machine learning to analyze toxic behavior that was identified by players that even accounted for regional variations. So something like your mom is just kind of funny in the United States and is extremely offensive, say, in Korea, would get identified as people over here aren't as offended as people over here. He writes he writes about that example in the Korean. I should have read his quote. He says, isn't the worst thing to be said, but in Korea it's considered the worst behavior, and the system by itself was able to figure it out. So anyway, apparently it's only had 1 mistake in 10,000 cases.
You know what? I firmly believe this basically screams there's a market here for gamers, a guide to etiquette or gaming etiquette, where you would actually go to
read it though.
Well, you would. No, it would be an online school. It'd be like lynda.com.
Like
you would
a certification that you'd have to take?
I'm certified non-jerky.
And then that gets you extra privileges. That's an interesting way to go. The Blizzard Academy, the League of Legends Academy.
Like this guy is like, you ever, so.
I'll be honest though, as much as that's a good idea, I would not want to go through it in order to play a game.
Well, then that separates the wheat from the chaff, and it's already working, Tom. It's already working.
You're saying I'm a troll, though. I'm not.
So it's all it is the 21st century of Goofus and Gallant. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, that references a child.
Check out your Highlights magazine.
Highlights magazine. In the back, they would have a little cartoon of what not to do, and the right way to do something, with 2 boys: Goofus, who did everything wrong, and Gallant, who did everything right.
Well, I certify Roger Chang as non-jerky right here on this very show. Thank you also for stepping in and filling in. Of course, Darren Kitchen, hack5.org, hak5.org, where you can get a Wi-Fi pineapple, as described earlier in the show when we talked about pen testing with Dan Tentler. But Roger, anything to let folks know about on your end?
Just follow me on Twitter at Jolly Roger. I am on the show pretty much every weekday.
Yep, always in the pre and post show, which you can get if you're a patron, or in the post show you can watch on video. Len Peralta, so good to have you back, and you're scaring the crap out of me with your art.
Oh, well, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
No, it's a good thing in this case. Yeah,
good.
It's working.
Yeah, you mentioned at the top of the show it's a very difficult thing to draw. We can talk a little bit about this after the after show as well, but all I'll say, this is a terrifying second date. You ought to check it out at my online store, lenperalta.store.com.
Yeah, because there's a syringe and a box of chocolates and people in hoods with scary eyes.
Syringy chocolate.
Check it out.
Don't miss it. If you want just the headlines of the day, you can get them at our headlines show, dailytechheadlines.com. Of course, if you would like to support the show, you can do so at dailytechnewsshow.com/support and be like the thousands of people who make this show possible. Thank you to each and every one of you who makes Daily Tech News Show happen. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can catch the show live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. And visit our website, dailytechnewsshow.com. Back on Monday with Ms. Veronica Belbot. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Good show.
Awesome
Man,
show.
We need a title, but I want to rave about that poster. This is awesome.
It's great.
Really good.
You know what's funny? It totally reminds me of young adult book covers a little bit. Like if someone were to do Sweet Valley High, then did a crossover with I Know What You Did Last Summer.
The dark reboot of Sweet Valley High.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I imagine it would look like.
Well, I thank you so much. What was kind of cool is I personally, I think the yellow glow on their faces kind of makes it pretty pretty cool. Yeah, this was a tough one to do because I was thinking, well, maybe I'll do something with Snowden, but it really wasn't about Snowden. It was just about this, the hackers getting this thing. So the name Second Date was kind of a neat little thing to kind of to glom onto. So I just, I thought of this hackers. I always represent these hackers as sort of ring wraiths, sort of, even though I know that that's not necessarily hacker culture, but it's sort of fun to, it's a lot more fun to represent them that way.
There's the malicious hackers, right? Or crackers sometimes, and that's what you're depicting here.
Right.
And I'm sure they don't see themselves this way, or maybe they do. Maybe they like.
Well, I think they would find it would be pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing because they're. I mean, what is it? Shadow. What are they called? Shadow.
Race.
No. The actual group themselves were calling themselves.
Oh, the Shadow. Yeah. No,
they were called the Shadow Broker.
Shadow Brokers, right?
I'm sorry. That is a reference, I believe, to a downloadable content for Mass Effect 3.
Shadow Brokers.
It's like an additional level. The Shadow Broker in the game is essentially this person that is like your master information collector. If you need information on how to about a government or how to get something,
cool.
That's the broker.
Are you looking for a shadow? Call the Shadow Brokers. 555-7200.
We're working for you.
Great. We'll get you the best deal on a shadow you can find this side of the Alleghenies.
And you know what? It's so I wouldn't say terrifying, but what's so appropriate is in the game, in the Mass Effect game where they uses it. The ship or the ship where the Shadow Broker lives and operates from is constantly moving, and it orbits this planet that has a huge electrical magnetic field, so the ship can never be detected. And I don't want to spoil the game portion of it, so I won't go too far into it, but I totally know why they use that name, because it's totally fitting.
It's awesome. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Hopefully people will want to get it at the online store.
Check out LedBrawl's store.
LedBrawlStore.com.
This is definitely one I want up on my wall.
It's cool. I was kind of hoping I was kind of hoping that Darren would have been able to see it because
I know,
it's sort of kind of up his alley. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to draw. It's fun to draw these hackers. It's kind of scary folk.
Well, the Second Date name just lends itself perfectly.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing too, what I tried to do, I added those little yellow glow to their faces, but I also wanted to do something. I didn't make the heart like red. It's sort of like faded, and then the flowers are sort of this grayish.
Yeah.
So it's these kind of scary things that they're bringing to you that aren't really nice on a date, but are
one huge ass syringe too.
I know.
Yeah, that was the
size
syringe.
of a caulking gun.
The syringe was from reading the article. They talked about it. I just thought, well, infecting.
So
the best way to infecting
totally.
something. So there you go. Great
titles.
I'm gonna go with Whacking the System.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Good.
You could go through some of the others that were in there just to give them a little.
Following up Whacking the System, which came at the top with Apple Envy. / root of this problem is NSA.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Someone at the FCC got robocalled. Is releasing Second Date a bad decision?
Nice.
Warning, warning, warning. Oh, warning, warning. Incoming scam call. Pinsa Apple. Oh, Pi NSA Apple. Shadow broker second date with eligible bombshell at Polar Sneeze. Your Mama-san. Pitted Chrome. Relocking Pandora's box.
Well,
Every lawsuit goodbye ain't gone. Who'll watch the Apple Watch? Never should have given the NSA a second date. A pineapple that's root for you. And certified non-jerky.
Certified non-jerky is good too.
Well, it looks like whacking the system is winning.
I like it. I'm going to go with that.
It's a good whack.
Although the slash root one definitely tugs at my heartstrings as well.
Well, tonight is going to be a gaming night. Coming back from Gen Con.
And tonight's gonna be a game night.
It is gonna be a game night. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a game called Two Rooms and a Boom. I don't know if you've ever heard of that game.
I haven't.
It is a blast, and it's a lot of fun if you have a lot of people.
Like
basically,
6 or more?
6 or more, definitely. We played at Gen Con, we played with 22 people. So 11 on both sides.
Oh,
I think
wow.
it was
like a football team.
Yeah, it's super cool. But essentially, what it is, there's a president, there's a bomber, there's a red team, there's a blue team. The blue team is trying to keep the president and the bomber in separate rooms. The bomber is the red team. The red team is trying to put the bomber in the same room as the president. But what makes it a lot of fun is that there are all kinds of other storylines going on. So everybody has their own card and they're role playing, and they have their own thing that they need to try to do. Like, for example, there's an engineer. The engineer has to meet with the bomber at some point. And or there's the first lady and the mistress and stuff like that. So a lot of people exactly. So the mistress needs to get the wife into the room with the bomb, vice versa, that kind of stuff.
Oh, so you've got competing motivations.
Exactly.
This is like Scandal mixed in with
the overall goal.
It is a blast. Now you can go to tworoomsandaboom.com. I think you can actually download the game, play it for free. But I recommend that you actually purchase the game because there's all kinds of, like, there was a Kickstarter thing, so there's all kinds of extra cards like zombies and stuff like that.
Nice.
And like the zombie card, you have to infect everybody, and the zombie wins if everybody gets infected. It's a blast.
Did you hear Did you hear him mention the red team when he was talking about pen testing? That's the red team, blue team is a typical way of describing, like, the red team is what his group does, which is try to get into the system and turn off they're trying to do the bad thing, and the blue team, and he mentioned, is like, and their blue team will try to stop us, and that they're the ones trying to stop the bad thing from happening.
Oh, how funny is that? Yeah. No, I didn't even catch that. No, it's but yeah, so it's a total geek thing. If you have a lot of people, it's great to play. Tons of new games actually that we picked up at Gen Con. So hopefully we'll get to play a lot of them tonight. So
who's all coming over? You got a big group, or?
Yeah, some family members are coming over. It's been kind of a tough week this week, so I think people need a break.
Good.
People need a little bit of a break and just sort of not have to think about things. But it's cool. It's cool. I highly recommend that game. And if anybody ever gets to go to Gen Con,
I've always wanted to. It's in that. It always used to be in that time of the year where it's really difficult to get away.
Yeah, it's always the beginning of August, which is really tough. But it's a lot of fun. It was cool, and it was actually cool this year to go because a lot
of. Is it in downtown?
Indianapolis? Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's right there. It's right there.
I actually have a towel from the Embassy Suites downtown.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it is. It's enormous. It's about. I mean, I want to say it's larger than Dragon Con, but it's more spread out. So, like,
so is it the same kind of thing where it's in hotels then, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and they're all connected, right? Yeah. So you can
61,423 people.
Yeah, it's big, but what's cool is that it's all interconnected, right? So, like, part of Gen Con takes place this year, at least, underneath Lucas Oil Stadium where the Colts play.
Oh, wow.
So you walked all the way through to Lucas Oil, and they had a dungeon. It's called a live dungeon. And you could actually go in there and LARP and stuff. It's pretty cool. Yeah,
I
it's
wonder
dark.
how many Colts fans realized that there was LARPing happening under the stadium.
I don't know, man. You'd be surprised. But it was
actually, what I want to know is how many Colts fans were LARPing underneath that stadium.
That's a good question.
Yeah,
that's a good question. I don't know, but it's so much fun. And if anybody gets a chance to go to Gen Con, definitely go. It was a lot of fun too. I was going to say, just because a couple of my games were out, and it actually felt like I was there for a reason. So
yeah, that always helps.
So like banners with my art and stuff were up. So it was pretty cool.
So you had a booth.
Well, I was part of Steve Jackson Games. So,
cool.
So yeah, so they were pushing Munchkin Apocalypse. A bunch of Munchkin things I did this year, and the big thing was Bill and Ted's excellent board game.
Bunch of Munchkin.
I remember they got raided by the FBI back in the late 80s.
Yes, the 90s, yeah.
90s.
Steve Jackson is the reason why the EFF is around, because it was that case that made the EFF.
That was the first case they took up, right?
Yep,
yeah.
That's it. Super cool. Anyway, so I got to get ready for game night, and
all right, man. Have fun.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Thank you so much for having me.
Keep the president out of the bomb room.
Well, it depends on if I'm going to be on the red team or the blue team.
Unless you're on the red team.
Yeah, I may want to blow that guy up, so we'll see how it goes.
Or girl.
Or girl. Yeah, exactly.
All right, guys. We advocate anyone in reality doing anything even close to that.
No, we do not do that.
We're talking
it's
about
just
a board game, a tabletop game.
Yes, 2 rooms and a boom. Definitely go and check it out if you have a big group of people. All right.
Awesome.
Take care. We'll see you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Len.
Bye.
This is great. This was a great interview with Dan. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was great. Awesome content.
That worked out well.
His slang.
Roger, you did a great job with the top stories and stuff. That was fantastic.
It was good.
It was a good show, top to bottom.
Top show, topping.
A top shelf show, ladies and gentlemen. A great way to finish the week. If anybody follows me on Current Geek, the show I do with Mr. Scott Johnson, I will not be doing Current Geek today, so there will be no Current Geek show because I am going to be at a wedding rehearsal for one of my best friends in the world who's getting married on Saturday. And Scott had some other things as well, so he took the opportunity to say, well, let's just not do a show. We will have a Current Geek next Friday, and then there will not be a Current Geek for 2 weeks while I'm away in Japan. But those of you worried about DTNS, it is well in hand. Roger has been working overtime, booking in guests, making sure we've got people to fill in. And we pretty much,
we pretty much have...
We have almost everything.
I think it's filled.
Wow. You're right.
Yeah, it's pretty much, it's filled.
Look, it's all good. A week in advance.
Some of these people are new, so I want to follow up with them a week before. Just to be sure.
Just to be sure. But yeah, it's looking good. We've got Justin and Veronica on Monday, August 29th. Jocelyn Moffat of Gamers Inn and the Angry Chicken with Patrick Beja on August 30th. Evan Koblentz with Scott Johnson. What are they going to talk about? Vintage computers, right?
Computers, and essentially, how long does technology last before we consider it obsolete? So.
Patrick Beja with Jen Cutter coming back to the show. Talk some esports on Thursday, September 1st. Scott Johnson and once IO9 editor-in-chief, now Ars Technica writer Annalee Newitz. I'm a little jealous that I'm missing Annalee on the show. Scott gets to talk to her. She's great. Jonathan Strickland back with Scott Johnson on Tuesday, September 6th. Lloyd Case with Scott Johnson on September 7th. Good to see him coming back to the show. Scott Moulton with Justin Robert Young. What are they talking about again?
So Scott Moulton is a data forensics guy, and his line of work essentially is pulling off data for law enforcement from suspects' hard drives or whatever. So we're essentially going to talk about data forensics and exactly what, in this day and age, is considered to be useful in law enforcement.
And then the last day I'm gone, September 9th, Justin Robert Young, Len Peralta will be in, and Terry Johnson.
Yes. He is from UC Berkeley, and he wrote a book about bioengineering. And so we'll be looking at kind of the technology, not the technology. Oh, let me pull it up real quick. You're talking about bioengineering.
It's a biotech. It'll be a biotech topic.
Blah blah blah. So classes, strength. Essentially, things like services like 23andMe, what he digs about them, but what he also doesn't like in terms of basically medical data infotainment.
Like what to know if you're going to use these kind of services.
Yeah.
That's
like, there is a lot of I don't want to say misrepresentation, but there's these companies don't necessarily disabuse people of the notion of what they can get from these services.
excellent. Well, thanks everybody for watching or listening, and I will be back next week. So you've got some time before all of that stuff's coming, but it's going to be a good couple of weeks, even with me gone. You won't even miss me. It's going to be fantastic, and I will be back on Monday with Veronica. See you then.